So now let us describe or define what moksha is. So again, I'm now going to define Kaivalya alone from this point onwards. So at this point, I want to use a very beautiful verse that Shankara presents in his Brahma Sutra Bhashyam. All right, it's a commentary on the Brahma Sutra. So, you know, at many parts, Adi Shankara has written many commentaries. And then at certain points, he all of a sudden, you know, presents something very beautifully. Not that other things are not beautiful, all right? But just that this particular verse, it is very descriptive in that sense. So that's why I'm using the word beautiful. So here is how he defines and describes moksha. Here it is. So take a couple of seconds to read it. So the key takeaways from that verse is, number one, moksha is seeing the self or Brahman. That's the key point. Because we will see that a little later, what the self, which is called Atman. Some of you may be familiar with this word, Atman or Atma, basically means the self. So moksha is seeing the self, which is myself, my true nature, or Brahman, which is God or Ishvara, as the supreme reality. So that Sanskrit word is called Paramarthikam. All right, Shankara uses the word Paramarthikam. It's a supreme reality. It is the absolute reality. That's what it means. And then the second term he uses is, it is eternal and changeless. Kutastha Nityam. This is the word he uses. So it is eternal and it is changeless. That's the meaning of Kutastha and then Nityam. Kutastha means that which doesn't change. All right, it's always constant. That's what it means. Kutastha. And then all pervasive. Vyomavat sarvavyapi. Vyomavat means like space. Vyoma means space. So like space, it is all pervasive. Very beautiful, right? Each of these words. Can you see that? Right? So he describes. And then free from all modifications. Sarva vikriya rahitam. It means it does not change and it does not have any kind of modifications. Or rather, it cannot be modified. That's what it means. So, nitya triptam. Always contented. Right? Beautiful. Right? It is always contented, which means acceptance. It is able to accept and always contented, not looking for some new experience, etc. Without parts, niravayavam. It does not have any parts. It is partless. Self-effulgent, swayam jyotis swabhavam. That means this self-effulgent means a good way to look at it is, now does a sun need a torchlight to reveal itself? A sun shines on its own, right? So here means if you in moksha state, you shine by yourself. The self or Brahman shines by itself. It does not need an external light to reveal it. That's what it means. And then here, very nice word, not subject to dharmika or adharmika actions. Very important. That means any kind of action that you do in your life, any kind of karma will not affect this self or Brahman. It is not affected by karma or even akarma or adharma, that means wrong actions. And very important point, you look at this word, kalatrayam, key word, that means its results. Karyena, kalatrayam, he says, in the 3 periods of time. So neither action can affect the Brahman or affect the self or its results. In all the 3 periods of time, in the past it cannot affect, in the present it cannot affect, in the future too it cannot affect. So that means it is totally what I call not affected by actions and its results, which is basically papa, punya, etc. All of that does not affect. Even your karma does not affect. And lastly, beautiful word, bodiless. Ashariratvam. Ashariratvam. Very key point. Now, when we say ashariratvam, what we are trying to say is this state of moksha is bodiless. So what does that mean? Now, he uses this word last. Now, there's a reason why he uses ashariratvam last. Because whatever that you are saying on the top, you can look at all the way from the top, paramarthikam, all the way till the last point, is actually does not refer to a body. Can you see that? That means if you see yourself as a body, you cannot look at yourself as a supreme reality. You cannot look at yourself as eternal or changeless because the body changes. The body is non-eternal. Can you see that? The body is not all pervasive. The body is always going through modifications. We are always not contented. And we have several parts. So if someone cuts off my hand, I can still live. Can you see that? So we have parts. And then we are not self-effulgent, right? Because when we go to sleep, we don't see anything. Sometimes in the dark, we need a light. All right. So we are definitely not self-effulgent. And then we are bound by dharma and adharma. Can you see that? And then we are subject to past, present, and future, which is very simple. Our past are filled with pleasant memories or regrets and remorse. Our future is filled with anxiety or plans. Our present, some of us don't even know that we are in the present, because our minds are oscillating between past and the future. So these three periods of time are subject to the body. So therefore, he concludes in the last statement, it is actually being ashariratvam. So we will talk about this ashariratvam in a little extensively in a while. So this actually helps us to see what is it that moksha is. So if you were to attain moksha, this is your state. Can you see that? So now the problem is this: if I were to tell you that, you know what, when you attain moksha or mukti, you won't have a body. If you feel scared about this whole idea, very high chance you're not ready for it. Can you see that? Because you know why? The fear of losing this body or being bodiless means that we are actually losing something which we are valuing. So because we have this value for the things that we are going to lose at the expense of losing the body, therefore, from the perspective of Shankara, that means it is not moksha, you are not ready for it. So this readiness, we will look at it a little later. This is a hint, but please pardon me, I cannot make that conclusion, because when you explore this knowledge a little more, maybe you will lose that fear. We cannot discount that, because you know our karmas and Ishvara works in very mysterious ways sometimes. All right, so you know this whole readiness can happen. All right, even not at this point, maybe in a future time, or maybe in a future birth. There's no hurry, actually. All right. So key point. So here the key that you've seen, the description that you find, you don't find this statement in many other places of his commentary, but here it's a very nice description and very summative in that sense. All right, that Shankara gives. And then now let's look at a few other things, perspectives of mukti. So this particular mukti that we just spoke about, that Adi Shankara just shared, there are various perspectives that we can take. And these perspectives are basically a couple of terms that are used in the Shastra. Jivanmukti, some of you would have heard this word, Jivanmukti. Sadyomukti is another one that is very, very familiar, not very popular, Sadyomukti. Kramamukti, and then videhamukti. So these are basically four perspectives of that one mukti. Now I want to be very clear here. It is not that there are four different types of mukti. Now if you look at a mountain, you can look at it from the north direction, you can look at it from the west direction, from the east and from the south. And the mountain will actually give a very unique perspective to you, but it's the same mountain. So four people can be looking at the same mountain from four different directions, but actually it is one mountain. So these four types of mukti, perspectives of mukti rather, is actually looking at this mukti, moksha, from four different perspectives. That's all. But it's all the same. So what are these? Let's look at it right now. So let's look at jivanmukti and sadyomukti together because they are very related. So jivanmukti literally means liberated while living. That means jivanmukti literally means once you attain this moksha, this perspective is that when you attain this moksha or mukti, you don't die immediately actually. You are still living, but you are liberated. So that's the meaning of liberated while living. So I'll put there, while she lives in the world, she remains unaffected by it. So here the word she refers to a mukta. A mukta means a person who has attained mukti is called mukta. All right. So while she lives in the world, she remains unaffected by it. So that's one experience. That's why the person is liberated while living and does not cease to act, although these actions have no bearing on him. So if the word him here refers to mukta as well. All right. So what we are saying is the jivanmukta, a person who has attained jivanmukti is called jivanmukta. So the jivanmukta, although he or she lives in the world, he or she is not affected by the world. Number one. Number two, he or she would still act in the world, but it doesn't affect him or her. So that's the key point of jivanmukti. Now, what is sadyomukti? Why do I put it together? Because it's actually a synonym, because it's very related, but there's a key difference. The word sadhya, the word sadyomukti, the earlier word, sadhya, the word that is connected to mukti, refers to the immediacy. That means immediacy means the moment someone teaches you about this Brahman, you gain this knowledge immediately. It is not you gain tomorrow. It is not that you gain few years later. when you are ready, that mukti takes place in the present moment. So that immediacy, that's why the key word here is immediacy, is represented by the word sadhya. So that's why that means the power of this knowledge, the liberating power, is actually because it can liberate you immediately in the present. So sometimes you're listening to a teacher, and then at a particular point in time, it just clicks. All right, so when that clicks at that particular point in time, now that particular perspective is called Sadyomukti, that perspective, because it has the capacity and the ability to make you free actually immediately. You would have realized this if you have studied this from any teacher. Some of you who may have attended classes on Mokşa or Vedanta or Advaita Vedanta, you realize that whenever the teacher teaches you, at a particular point of time, there's a light bulb in your head. You know, suddenly it lights up, right? You feel that, you know, it's very clear to me. Now it's something like that. But this light bulb, it keeps becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Finally, it just consumes you. And that means jivanmukti. And it happens immediately. So that's why it's called Sadyomukti. Then let's go to the other perspective, which is called videhamukti. The word videhamukti means without body. The mukti without body. So V and deha means without body. So mukti. What is without body mukti? So it is basically the whole concept of casting off the body of a mukta at the time of death. So there are two schools of thought in videhamukti. One school of thought is that although the person is a jivanmukta, but at a particular point in time, the person will drop the body because the body falls off because something called prarabdha karma, which we'll talk about later. So in that particular point, they say that he discards his body and merges with Brahman. All right, so that is the view. They say that at that point in time, when the karma gets exhausted, the jivanmukta will drop off the body and merge with Brahman. There is also, so the third point, which I just mentioned, it happens after the exhaustion of the prarabdha karma. I'll talk about prarabdha karma a little later. Because prarabdha karma means even after gaining mukti, there is some karma that is still left that needs to be exhausted. All right, so this particular prarabdha karma is basically that karma that is left behind to actually stay there till the jivanmukta drops off. So people ask this question sometimes. Why does a mukta has prarabdha karma? You know why? Very simple answer. If the mukta does not have a prarabdha karma, he cannot make another mukta. Can you get it? Because he still has to teach. She still has to teach. So the person who has gained this mukti also can make another person a mukta. So therefore, this prarabdha karma is the allowance of Ishvara so that he or she, after gaining the knowledge, can now liberate others. If not, there is no window period to liberate others, to share with others. It's impossible. So there is one explanation given. Although there is another technical explanation, which we will possibly talk in another class. So another interpretation is, now this is the second perspective of this videhamukti, is that jivanmukti and videhamukti is actually the same. So what this here means that the moment you attain jivanmukti, you lose your identification with the body. So it is not literally the body dropping off, dying. Can you see that? So videhamukti's second meaning is the body doesn't drop off actually, all right, but you lose your identification with the body. Although the body is there, but you lose the identification. So let me give an example of this. Now sometimes you watch a TV series, all right, on Netflix or any other, you watch TV series. Now, then you're watching multiple series, a long, series, many seasons. And then in one of the seasons, a character appears called John. All right. So in the second season, John dies. All right. John is dead. The funeral is done. John is dead. And then in your mind, John is dead. And then in the third season, John appears again. But you know why? The series is now showing the prequel, what happened before. But in your mind, John is dead. Although you're watching John in the series, in the episode, but in your mind, actually in the second season, John died. So he's just making an appearance in the past. But in your mind, John is dead. So John is alive from one standpoint because he's appearing in the TV episode. But in your mind, John is dead. Actually, it's not happening in the present. Can you see that? The same thing happens in the case of videhamukti. Although the jivanmukta has a body, but it's in the past. It's over. It's gone. Can you see that? Although it is still operating, but it is not there. So that is the whole, the way you look at not having a body while attaining mukti. Then the last one is called kramamukti. All right, kramamukti. Kramamukti is basically what we call as gradual liberation. Now, what is gradual liberation? So sometimes some people who attain this Vedanta knowledge, you realize that although you are learning Vedanta or learning about Brahman or yourself, but you don't attain the mukti immediately, but you have put a lot of effort. So what happens to such a person? So such a person goes to a heaven called Brahmaloka. That's what the Shastra says, goes to Brahmaloka, and then the person doesn't return back to this life, doesn't get born again. But that person remains in Brahmaloka and then learn from Lord Brahma. Now Lord Brahma will teach the person this Vedanta, and he once he until Samyak Jnana, that means Samyak Jnana here means clear knowledge. Until the clear knowledge about the self and Brahman is attained, and then at the end of the kalpa, which is the dissolution of the world creation, he attains mukti or moksha. So this is actually specially for people who have done a lot of sadhana, means spiritual practices, and attained this particular done a lot of sadhanas and attained, rather learning this knowledge, very advanced, but have not attained mukti. So they will go to Brahmaloka and stay there until the dissolution of the kalpa. That's the whole idea. So these are basically the perspectives of kramamukti. So you can see Sajjivas will not be born again, and also it is very relevant for people who worship Saguna Brahman. See, the word Saguna Brahman means God or Ishvara with a form. Saguna means with attributes. So when you worship Ishvara in a form, like which has what I call nama and a rupa, a name and a form. When you worship Ishvara with that particular what I call vision, then such a person may go to Brahmaloka and then gain that knowledge there. That's what the Shastra says.